Europe's ancient tapestry, 3,000 years of peoples, empires, and transformations. To hook and intro. Imagine a continent not as it is today, but as a vast, untamed canvas where history was painted stroke by stroke over thousands of years. Before nations, before empires, there were peoples, constantly shifting, clashing, and merging, shaping the very ground beneath their feet. What if I told you that the tapestry of Europe, with its incredible diversity of languages, cultures, and identities, was woven from threads of migration, conquest, and profound transformation that began an astonishing 4,000 years ago? This is a story far grander than any single kingdom, a narrative of human resilience, ambition, and the relentless march of change. Picture yourself standing on a windswept steppe, or perhaps deep within a primeval forest as new sounds echo through the trees, new faces appear on the horizon, and new technologies reshape daily life. This was Europe 2,000 years before the Common Era. Over the next 3 millennia, from approximately 2000 before Common Era to 1000 Common Era, this continent would be a crucible of human experience. We will witness the birth of cultures, the rise of astonishing civilizations, and their dramatic, often violent transformations. This is not just a tale of kings and emperors, but of entire peoples, their journeys, their triumphs, and their eventual absorption into the grander narrative of Europe. From the mysterious wanderings of the Proto-Indo-Europeans, whose languages still echo in our modern tongues, to the dazzling brilliance of ancient Greece and the unstoppable might of Rome, Europe was a stage for monumental events. Then came the era of great migrations, a tumultuous period that saw the Western Roman Empire crumble, replaced by a patchwork of new kingdoms forged by Germanic tribes. And as these new societies found their footing, a fresh wave of expansion unfolded with the Slavs moving across the east and the Vikings dominating the northern seas. Every shift, every conflict, every moment of peace was a thread in this incredibly complex and endlessly fascinating story. This journey through 3,000 years is not just an academic exercise, it is the story of us. The languages we speak, the laws we live by, the very ideas that shape our societies today all have roots in this distant past. The migrations, the empires, the cultural fusions of this period laid the foundational stones upon which modern Europe was built. Understanding this deep history provides crucial context for our present world, revealing how identities are formed, how societies adapt, and how even the most dominant civilizations can undergo profound, irreversible change. Today, we embark on an epic journey to trace these crucial developments. We will explore how different groups emerged, how they flourished through innovation and organization, and how internal weaknesses or external pressures led to their decline or, more often, their profound transformation. Get ready to witness the forces that shaped a continent, to understand the intertwined destinies of its peoples, and to discover why the echoes of these ancient transformations still resonate so powerfully today. This is the saga of Europe's making, from its earliest inhabitants to the dawn of the medieval age. 3. Historical context and setup. Let us set the stage in Europe around 2000 before Common Era, a time shrouded in the mists of antiquity, yet profoundly important. This was the Late Bronze Age, a period that followed millennia of Stone Age existence. Across the continent, various indigenous Neolithic communities, settled farmers who had slowly spread agriculture from the Near East, populated the land. Their lives were intimately tied to the soil, their villages scattered across fertile plains and river valleys. These early Europeans had developed local cultures, unique crafts, and distinct ways of life, but a massive transformation was already underway, a slow, inexorable wave of change that would reshape the very linguistic and cultural fabric of the continent. This transformative force was the expansion of the Proto-Indo-European speaking peoples. Their exact origins are still debated, but a strong theory places their homeland in the Pontic-Caspian steppe, a vast grassland stretching north of the Black and Caspian Seas. These groups were often pastoralists, skilled horsemen, and innovators in metallurgy, particularly in the use of bronze. Driven by population growth, a quest for new pastures, and perhaps military advantages, they began to spread outwards in multiple waves, moving west into Central Europe, south into Anatolia and the Balkans, and east towards Asia. Their arrival was not a single, unified invasion, but rather a long, complex series of migrations and cultural diffusions over many centuries, a process that gradually introduced a new family of languages that would eventually dominate much of Europe. As these Indo-European speakers mingled with, assimilated, or sometimes displaced the existing indigenous populations, new cultures began to coalesce. In Central Europe, groups associated with the corded ware and bell beaker cultures emerged, characterized by their distinctive pottery and burial practices. These early interactions were crucial, laying the foundational linguistic and genetic layers for what would become the major language families of Europe, the ancestors of Celtic, Germanic, Italic, Hellenic, Baltic, and Slavic peoples. The continent was a dynamic melting pot, constantly evolving. By 800 before Common Era, Europe was firmly in the Iron Age. The mastery of iron smelting offered a harder, more abundant metal than bronze, revolutionizing tools, weapons, and agriculture. This technological leap often accompanied or enabled the flourishing of distinct new groups. In Central Europe, the Hallstatt culture and later the vibrant Latin culture began to define the Celts. These were dynamic warrior societies known for their distinctive art, intricate metalwork, and widespread trading networks. From their core in Central Europe, the Celts expanded dramatically across much of Western Europe, into Gaul, Britain, Iberia, and even parts of Italy and the Balkans, creating a vast cultural sphere before the rise of Rome. Meanwhile, in the Mediterranean, a different kind of civilization was emerging. From the ashes of earlier Aegean cultures like the Minoans and Mycenaeans, the Greek city-states began to form. These independent polis, like Athens and Sparta, developed unique political systems, philosophical inquiries, and artistic expressions that would become the bedrock of Western thought. Their maritime prowess led them to establish colonies across the Mediterranean and Black Seas, spreading their culture and influence far and wide. To their west, on the Italian peninsula, various Italic tribes were coalescing, among them the Latins, who would eventually found Rome, a city destined for an unprecedented rise to power. Further north, beyond the Rhine and Danube rivers, lay the lands of the Germanic tribes. Originating in Scandinavia and Northern Europe, these groups, ancestors of later Goths, Vandals, and Franks, were a mosaic of independent tribal communities. They engaged in farming, raiding, and trade, often interacting with the Celtic peoples to their south. Their societies were characterized by strong warrior traditions and a complex system of kinship and loyalty. For centuries, they existed on the fringes of the burgeoning Mediterranean civilizations, a growing force that would eventually cast a long shadow over the Roman world. The stage was now set. Europe was a patchwork of diverse peoples, each with their own burgeoning identities, technologies, and social structures. From the sophisticated city-states of Greece to the warrior confederations of the Celts and the tribal societies of the Germanics, the continent was a vibrant and volatile tapestry. The threads were laid, ready for the grand drama of empires, migrations, and transformations that would define the next 1500 years. The story of Europe was about to unfold in epic proportions, a narrative shaped by relentless interaction, adaptation, and the enduring human spirit. 4. The story unfolds. Phase 1. The apex of classical power. The narrative of Europe's peoples next takes us to the heart of the Mediterranean, where two colossal civilizations would rise, dominate, and fundamentally redefine the continent. First, the Greeks, who from around 800 before Common Era carved out an intellectual and artistic legacy that continues to inspire. Their city-states or polis were laboratories of human thought and governance. In Athens, democracy flourished, fostering groundbreaking philosophy from Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, and unparalleled dramatic arts from playwrights like Sophocles and Euripides. Spartan warriors forged an unmatched military discipline. These independent city-states often warred amongst themselves, but they united in the face of a common external threat: the mighty Persian Empire. The Greco-Persian Wars in the 5th century before Common Era were epoch-defining. The victories at Marathon, Thermopylae, and Salamis were not just military triumphs. They were seen as the triumphs of Greek freedom and independent thought against Eastern despotism. This golden age solidified Greek identity and cultural supremacy, spreading Hellenic influence through trade and colonization across the Mediterranean. Later, Alexander the Great, a Macedonian king steeped in Greek culture, would explode onto the scene, conquering the vast Persian Empire and spreading Hellenistic culture as far as India, though his empire fragmented after his death. While Greek culture blossomed, a new power was slowly but inexorably rising on the Italian peninsula: Rome. Starting as a small city-state, the Roman Republic, founded around 509 before Common Era, expanded through a potent combination of military might, shrewd diplomacy, and a sophisticated legal and administrative system. Its citizen soldiers, organized into formidable legions, steadily conquered its neighbors, then unified Italy. The brutal Punic Wars against Carthage, a powerful maritime rival in North Africa, cemented Rome's dominance in the Western Mediterranean. By the 1st century before Common Era, Rome controlled vast territories from Spain to Greece, absorbing the rich Hellenistic culture into its own burgeoning identity. The transition from republic to empire was marked by internal strife, civil wars, and the iconic figure of Julius Caesar, whose ambition and military genius reshaped Rome. After his assassination, his adopted son, Augustus, established the Principate in 27 before Common Era, ushering in the Pax Romana, a period of unprecedented peace and stability that would last for 2 centuries. Under the empire, Rome reached its zenith, controlling an enormous territory stretching from Britain to the Sahara and from the Atlantic to Mesopotamia. Romanization was a powerful force, spreading Latin language, Roman law, impressive engineering, roads, aqueducts, bridges, and urban life across its provinces. Celtic tribes in Gaul and Britain, Iberian peoples, and various Germanic groups along the Rhine and Danube frontiers were brought into the Roman sphere, some assimilated, others resisting. Phase 2: the empire's vulnerability and the Great Migrations. The Pax Romana could not last forever. By the 3rd century Common Era, the Roman Empire was plunged into a severe crisis. Decades of political instability, frequent civil wars, economic turmoil, and relentless external pressures stretched the empire to its breaking point. Emperors rose and fell with dizzying speed, the army became increasingly reliant on mercenaries, and inflation crippled the economy. This internal decay created vulnerabilities that external forces were eager to exploit. The most significant of these external pressures came from the Germanic tribes, who had for centuries dwelled beyond Rome's northern frontiers, in the lands of what Romans called Germania. These were not a single unified people, but a diverse collection of tribes such as the Goths, Vandals, Franks, and Lombards. They had long interacted with Rome, trading with its merchants, serving in its armies, and occasionally raiding its borders. But in the late 4th century Common Era, a new, terrifying force emerged from the east: the Huns. The Huns, fierce nomadic warriors from Central Asia, swept westward with devastating speed and ferocity, creating a domino effect across Eastern Europe. Their brutal onslaught pushed various Germanic tribes, who themselves had settled for generations out of their lands and directly into the path of the Roman Empire. The most notable of these were the Goths. In 376 Common Era, desperate and fleeing the Huns, a massive group of Visigoths sought refuge within the Roman Empire, crossing the Danube River. Rome, already weakened, struggled to manage this enormous influx, leading to exploitation, rebellion, and open warfare. Just 2 years later, in 378 Common Era, the Visigoths decisively defeated a Roman army at the Battle of Adrianople, killing Emperor Valens. This was a seismic shock, a clear signal that the once invincible Roman legions were no longer supreme. It was a turning point, marking the beginning of the end for the Western Roman Empire. Over the next century, wave after wave of Germanic peoples, Vandals, Suebi, Alans, Franks, and more poured into Roman territory. Sometimes as invaders, sometimes as settlers seeking new homes, often in complex alliances and conflicts with Rome itself. In 410 Common Era, the Visigoths, led by Alaric, famously sacked the city of Rome itself, an event that sent shockwaves across the Roman world. Though the city was no longer the capital of the empire, its symbolic significance was immense. 45 years later, in 455 Common Era, the Vandals from North Africa also sacked Rome. These events underscored the irreversible decline of imperial power in the West. The fall of the Western Roman Empire is traditionally dated to 476 Common Era, when the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. However, this was not a sudden collapse but the culmination of a long, complex process of political fragmentation, economic decline, and cultural transformation. The empire did not so much fall as it gradually dissolved, replaced by a patchwork of Germanic successor kingdoms across its former territories. The Roman administrative structures, legal traditions, and Latin language continued to exist in various adapted forms, blending with the customs and languages of the new Germanic rulers. Phase 3: The birth of medieval Europe. As the dust settled on the Western Roman Empire's fragmentation, a new European landscape began to take shape. This was the dawn of the early Middle Ages, a period often mislabeled as the Dark Ages, but in reality a dynamic era of innovation, cultural synthesis, and the formation of new identities. In Gaul, the Frankish tribes under leaders like Clovis consolidated their power. Clovis's conversion to Nicene Christianity, as opposed to the Arian Christianity adopted by many other Germanic groups, was a pivotal moment, forging a strong alliance with the Roman Catholic Church and the existing Romanized population. The Franks would eventually build the most enduring and powerful of the Germanic successor kingdoms, laying the groundwork for modern France and Germany. In Britain, the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, Germanic tribes from continental Europe, migrated across the North Sea in the 5th and 6th centuries. They established several competing kingdoms, pushing the native Romano-British Celtic populations to the west Wales and North Scotland. This marked the birth of Anglo-Saxon England, a distinct culture that would develop its own legal systems, language Old English, and eventually a unified kingdom. Meanwhile, in the East, the Roman Empire did not fall. The Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire, with its magnificent capital at Constantinople, continued to flourish for another 1,000 years. It preserved the intellectual heritage of Greece and Rome, developed a distinct form of Orthodox Christianity, and served as a powerful bulwark against invasions from the East, greatly influencing Slavic peoples and maintaining a vibrant cultural and economic hub. Emperor Justinian I, in the 6th century, famously attempted to reconquer the lost Western territories and codified Roman law into the Corpus Juris Civilis, a legal masterpiece that would shape European law for centuries. Concurrently, a new massive wave of migrations began to reshape Eastern and Central Europe, the Slavic expansion. From their presumed homeland in Eastern Europe, Slavic peoples, often in relatively peaceful movements, expanded into vast territories left open by the decline of Roman influence and the westward movement of Germanic tribes. They diversified into three main branches: the West Slavs, ancestors of Poles, Czechs, Slovaks; the East Slavs, ancestors of Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians; and the South Slavs, ancestors of Serbs, Croats, Bulgarians, establishing various tribal groups and early political entities across these regions. As the 7th and 8th centuries progressed, Western Europe saw the rise of the Carolingian dynasty among the Franks, culminating in Charlemagne. Crowned emperor by the Pope in 800 Common Era, Charlemagne forged an empire that briefly reunited much of Western Europe, fostering a period of cultural and intellectual revival known as the Carolingian Renaissance. This empire, though short-lived, laid crucial foundations for the political landscape of medieval Europe and the future separation of France and Germany. But just as Europe began to stabilize, another formidable force emerged from the north: the Vikings. From the late 8th to the 11th centuries, Norse peoples from Scandinavia launched widespread expeditions of raiding, trading, and settlement across Europe. Their fearsome longships allowed them to strike deep inland via rivers, terrorizing coastal communities in Britain, Ireland, and Francia. But they were also brilliant traders and explorers, establishing settlements in Iceland, Greenland, and even reaching North America. In Eastern Europe, Swedish Vikings, known as the Rus, established extensive trade networks and were instrumental in the formation of early East Slavic states, most notably Kievan Rus, considered the precursor to modern Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. By 1000 Common Era, the European map had been utterly transformed. The once unified Roman Empire was a distant memory in the West, replaced by a mosaic of Germanic, Celtic, and Slavic kingdoms. The Byzantine Empire stood as a beacon in the East, and Viking influence had reshaped the North. The constant migrations, conflicts, and fusions of these diverse peoples had forged a new European identity, a complex tapestry of languages, laws, and cultures, all increasingly united, albeit with distinct branches, by the burgeoning force of Christianity. The foundational stones of medieval Europe were firmly in place. 5. Impact and legacy. The period from 2000 before Common Era to 1000 Common Era was an epoch of monumental change, leaving an indelible mark on the continent of Europe. The immediate aftermath of the Western Roman Empire's collapse in 476 Common Era was one of profound political fragmentation. Where once a single, centralized authority had governed vast territories, now stood a patchwork of often warring Germanic kingdoms: the Visigoths in Hispania, the Ostrogoths and later Lombards in Italy, the Franks in Gaul, and the Anglo-Saxons in Britain. This disintegration led to a significant decline in centralized administration, urban life, and long-distance trade, resulting in a more localized, agrarian economy. Yet decline is too simple a term. What followed was a complex cultural transformation. While Roman political power waned in the West, its legal principles, administrative ideas, and Latin language did not vanish entirely. Instead, they blended with the customs and social structures of the incoming Germanic peoples. The Salic law of the Franks, for example, incorporated elements of Roman legal thought. Latin evolved, adapting in different regions to form the Romance languages: French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. The influence was profound, enduring, and deeply integrated, a true synthesis of distinct cultural streams. One of the most profound long-term impacts was the linguistic landscape of Europe. The initial Indo-European migrations laid the bedrock for nearly all modern European languages. The development of distinct branches: Hellenic, Italic, leading to Latin and Romance languages, Celtic, Germanic, Baltic, and Slavic, directly reflects these ancient movements and the subsequent evolution of separate cultural identities. English, for instance, is a Germanic language with a massive infusion of Latin and French, another Romance language, a testament to the layers of conquest and cultural exchange. Culturally, the legacy is equally immense. Greek philosophy, drama, and democratic ideals provided an enduring intellectual foundation that would be rediscovered and reinterpreted for centuries. Roman law, governance, and engineering became practical blueprints for subsequent states. Even the early artistic traditions of the Celts and the societal structures of the Germanic tribes contributed to Europe's rich tapestry, influencing everything from medieval art to feudal systems. The spread of Christianity during this period was arguably the single most unifying and transformative force. From a persecuted sect, it became the official religion of the Roman Empire and then the dominant faith across Europe. The Roman Catholic Church in the West and the Orthodox Church in the East became powerful institutions, not just spiritual guides but also centers of learning, administration, and political influence. Monasteries preserved classical texts and became crucial educational hubs, bridging the gap between antiquity and the medieval era. The migrations of Germanic and Slavic peoples fundamentally redrew the demographic map of Europe, laying the ethno-linguistic foundations for many modern European nations. The Franks' consolidation in Gaul paved the way for France. Anglo-Saxon settlements in Britain led to England. The Slavic expansion across Eastern Europe shaped the future territories of Poland, Bohemia, Russia, and the Balkan states. The Viking settlements contributed to distinct regional identities and even established kingdoms like Kievan Rus, which would form the bedrock of later Eastern European nations. Furthermore, the very concept of Europe began to coalesce during this period. While not a unified political entity, the shared heritage of Greco-Roman civilization, combined with the new layers of Germanic and Slavic cultures and the overarching force of Christianity, fostered a nascent sense of a distinct European identity, particularly in contrast to the Islamic world emerging to its south and east. This shared, complex legacy created a common framework for cultural, legal, and political development that would continue to evolve throughout the High Middle Ages and beyond. In essence, this thousand-year span was a vast experiment in cultural evolution. It demonstrated how deeply interconnected human societies are, how migration is a constant, powerful engine of change, and how seemingly catastrophic events can often be the midwives of entirely new and vibrant civilizations. The echoes of these ancient peoples, their decisions, and their transformations continue to shape our world, a testament to history's enduring power. 6. Reflections and lessons. This grand sweep of European history, spanning 3 millennia, offers profound lessons on the nature of human societies, power, and change. What can we truly learn from the rise and fall of ancient peoples and mighty empires? First, the fluidity of identity. Early peoples like the Celts, Goths, or Slavs were not static, homogeneous entities in the way we often conceive of modern nations. They were dynamic confederations, absorbing new members, shifting alliances, and transforming over time through contact with others. This reminds us that identity is rarely pure or fixed, but a constant process of adaptation and interaction. How does this historical fluidity challenge our modern, often rigid, notions of national or ethnic identity? Second, the relentless power of migration. From the Proto-Indo-Europeans to the Huns, Germanic tribes, Slavs, and Vikings, movement has been a defining feature of European history. These migrations were driven by complex factors: environmental pressures, population growth, search for resources, or external threats. They were often catalysts for profound change, both destructive and constructive. What does this long history of migration teach us about human resilience and the inevitable ebb and flow of populations across continents? Third, the cyclical nature of power and empire. The Greek city-states, the Roman Empire, and later the Carolingian attempt at unification all reached incredible zeniths of power and influence, only to face internal decay, external pressures, and eventual fragmentation. No empire, no matter how mighty, is eternal. What does the fall or transformation of Rome tell us about the vulnerabilities inherent in vast, centralized powers? And what lessons can modern nations draw from these ancient narratives of overextension and internal strife? Fourth, the double-edged sword of cultural exchange. Interactions between different peoples inevitably led to both conflict and tremendous enrichment. The Romans absorbed Greek philosophy and law, Germanic peoples adapted Roman administrative structures, Slavs adopted Byzantine Christianity. Cultures are rarely isolated, they are constantly shaped by external influences. How does this historical synthesis underscore the value of diverse perspectives and the dangers of cultural isolation? Fifth, the enduring legacy of ideas and institutions. Despite political collapses and societal upheavals, core ideas like Greek democracy, Roman law, or Christian ethics persisted, adapted, and influenced subsequent generations for centuries. These intellectual and institutional frameworks proved remarkably resilient, shaping the very fabric of later European societies. What foundational ideas from our own time do we believe will endure through future transformations, and how do we ensure their preservation and evolution? Sixth, the importance of adaptability. Peoples and societies that flourished often demonstrated a remarkable capacity to adapt to new environments, new technologies, and new political realities. Those that failed to adapt often faded away or were absorbed. This highlights a universal truth about survival and success in a changing world. Finally, consider the role of external catalysts. The Huns, for instance, were not European, yet their westward push dramatically reshaped Europe's destiny. History is not confined to neat geographical boxes. External forces often trigger profound internal changes. What global events today might be acting as similar catalysts, subtly or overtly reshaping our own societies in ways we may not yet fully comprehend? These are not just dusty stories from ancient times. They are living lessons, echoing across the millennia, reminding us of the dynamic, fragile, and endlessly fascinating nature of human civilization. 7 Outro. Our journey through 2000 before Common Era to 1000 Common Era reveals a Europe in constant motion, a continent forged not by static borders, but by the continuous flux of peoples, ideas, and empires. We have witnessed the initial tapestry woven by Indo-European migrations, the golden ages of Greece and Rome, and their eventual transformation. We saw the turbulent era of Germanic and Slavic migrations, leading to the collapse of the Western Roman Empire and the dramatic emergence of new kingdoms. Finally, we explored the dynamic Viking Age, which further reshaped the political and cultural landscape of the continent. This thousand-year span was nothing less than the birth of medieval Europe. The enduring legacies of Greek philosophy, Roman law, Germanic customs, Slavic expansion, and the unifying, yet sometimes divisive, force of Christianity all converged to create the foundation upon which our modern world rests. From the languages we speak to the political structures we inhabit, the echoes of this profound era resonate deeply. But the story of Europe is far from over. This period simply sets the stage for even grander narratives. If you have found this journey compelling, consider exploring the fascinating history of the Byzantine Empire's thousand-year survival and its unique blend of Roman, Greek, and Christian traditions. Or delve into the intricate politics and cultural blossoming of the High Middle Ages, a time when feudalism reached its peak and great cathedrals rose across the land. Perhaps you would be interested in the Crusades, a series of religious wars that redefined the relationship between Europe and the Middle East, or the detailed story of the Norman conquest of England in 1066 Common Era, a pivotal moment born from the Viking legacy. History is not just a collection of facts, it is the grand narrative of human experience, a testament to our continuous struggle, adaptation, and endless capacity for both destruction and creation. By understanding the intricate layers of Europe's past, we gain a deeper appreciation for the complex world we inhabit today and the forces that continue to shape our collective destiny. Thank you for joining us on this epic voyage through Europe's ancient tapestry. We hope to see you again for our next historical adventure.